Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of RE066, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called The Lies of Humanity, written by Grenadier42. Humans are a race of liars. Tassar slurred loudly as he sat down his bottle of heavy vapors. He itched his nose for a moment with his offhand claw, trying to get the vapors to push deep, before he leaned back and sighed contentedly, a pale puff of yellow leaving his mouth. If their mouths are moving, they are lying. A quiet clattering of teeth in amusement arose from around the table as some of the other snits inhaled their own vapors in solidarity. Mutterings of raw deals, poor sportsmanship, and hints at outlandish stories fluttered around the table as the group sat their own bottles back down. One or two of the group, younger hatchmates, shuffled nervously, unsure of how to join in on the conversation. The remainder kept still. I was on a trade mission, Tassar muttered, leaning back to look at the rest of the table, headed for the Vasli roundabout. A good trade deal, I was told by a human who organized it. Bah! He took another inhale of his vapors before setting it back down. I was supposed to be trading for 400 tail lengths of processed Gandolian fibers. A whistle arose from one of the others around the table, causing Tsar to point at the other snick, shouting, I know, 400 tail lengths, guaranteed to have been shearing off a live one. Good grade, nice payday. So what happened? One of the others asked. Well, Sixt, I'll tell you, muttered Tsar as he leaned forward conspiratorially. It was alpaca. A roar arose from around the table as another snick shouted and pounded the table in annoyance and anger at the Brood brothers' mistreatment. I know, shouted Tsar. A bunch of liars. Tried to fake me out with substitute. A human substitute. What did you do? Asked Esict. Tassar breathed in another noseful of vapors and quickly exhaled the yellow haze in annoyance, wasting the boost to his high. I refused the trade, took my money, and went back home. He went to take another deep inhale, but stopped when he noticed the bottle was empty. He waved the Kuri, manning the bar for another before sighing. Ended up having to make some bad trades for the next several mood cycles just to make back the money I'd lost. You know they venerate their liars, right? Offered Harris, who was sitting off to Tsar's left. All eyes turned to Harris, who flicked his tongue in a sign of dismissal. I studied their histories. Some of their greatest heroes are criminals and liars. Like who? Asked Lara. One of their old tribes had a guy named Caesar. Good snicked name, whispered Sast. Right, agreed Harris. Anyways, he was part of a warrior tribe where great honors could be bestowed for righteous defense of the homelands. However, his tribe was at peace. So how could he get these honors? No, whispered several at the table. Yes, said Harris. He went up to the edge of his tribal lands and waited. Then when some refugees requested access to pass through, he slaughtered them. Harris made a stabbing motion with his hands. Human killing human, one at a time with knives, not with large weapons. It was his and his soldiers' word against the dead humans, so he called it an invasion. Tails and tongues twitched nervously as the implications of the set in. A war of conquest based upon lies, slaughter in the thousands based solely on one human's word. It was unimaginable. Where were his nestmates to counter his word? Where were the righteous laws to prevent this from happening? Where were the governing officials to put a stop to him? Later, his people made him a god, Harris added before taking a casual sniff of his vapors. An entire race of liars, hissed Sauce venomously, which set off a chain reaction of all the others muttering curses and condemnations of the entire human race. The rumblings from earlier became full stories, recounting all the ways in which humans had personally lied to each of them, promises of divine justice, of good deals, of conquest, of bumps in the night, and of chances that, if taken, would pay off. Finally, Tassar noticed at one of their table an older schnick named Lisrai had not joined in on the conversation. He quieted everyone else down before motioning towards Lisrai. Lisrai, you have worked with humans more than any of us. Surely you must have better stories than all of us on Snack. What is the worst lie a human has ever told you? The Sry had been sitting still, nursing the bottle of vapors that was still mostly full. He took a brief sniff before setting it back down, letting the green vapor slowly ooze back out of his nostrils. After he had finished breathing, he said quietly but clearly, "Go. I'm right behind you." A few quiet jaw clicks and half-hearted amusements rippled through the group as he attempted to laugh, but the tail twitched easily gave way to a nervous energy that had settled over the table. Eyes moved about, looking from Snicked to Snicked, each of them trying to figure out what the joke they were missing. Finally, Tassar spoke up. "I'm not sure we understand. The worst lie?" "That was the worst lie," Lesrai said before repeating, "Go. I'm right behind you." He looked around the room, taking in the questions and gazes before finally sighing heavily. "All right," he finally said to all the silenced questions. He breathed in some more vapors before beginning his story. "This was many moon cycles ago. I worked in a mining station in the Zutali sector. There's had a gas giant there rich in H3, and we're more than happy to sell the mineral rights to the highest bidder. My firm won, and so the mining and processing plants were set up in orbit. Very normal, very ordinary. I had a friend there, a human called Lewis." He paused and chuckled quietly to himself for a moment before sharply breathing in. "I hope he wouldn't mind me calling him a friend." He looked at the confusion of the other Snicks' faces. "Human friendship is very, nebulous. The word has a different meaning depending on who says it. To some, a friend is like a brood cousin, someone you see occasionally, but you don't have a strong attachment. You talk, crack jokes, but never discuss serious matters. To others, a friend is like a combination between a brood mate and a blood mate." "Impossible," hissed Sars. "A human willing to offer a life for a life." "Yet, it is true," said Leshrai, "and I would hope that Lewis considered us this, but..." His tail twitched for a moment in contemplation before he continued. "Lewis and I did not start off on speaking terms. I was aware of the reputation of his species, and so I did my best to avoid them. However, as our environmental needs are similar, our kind were forced to share a dormitory." Leshrai took another inhale of his vapors before setting the bottle down. He held the vapor in his lungs, and, as he spoke, it slowly leaked out of his nose and mouth in a fine green mist. "Being an H3 refinery, we were a popular target. Sure, we had a defense force, but as you all know, bombardments can take hours. Locked in the dormitories, there was little else to do. So Lewis tried to teach myself and some of the other inhabitants games, namely poker. I can see by some of your reactions you already know this game," Leshrai said, quietly clacking his teeth in amusement. "A decidedly human game. A game built on deception and money. To the victors go the spoils and all that nonsense." Leshrai added with a sigh, "I was terrible at it. I lost so much money to Lewis, but he always returned it at the end of the game. That was just for fun, he would say. Soon we'll play a real game." "He returned the money?" Tsar asked, incredulous. "He did, but I doubt it was out of charity," Leshrai said, twitching his tail dismissively. "If I lost all but my money, I would be out. There would be no more game then." "Ah, so it was to stay entertained then," offered Harris. "Most likely," agreed Leshrai. "I think he just enjoyed the company. Many of the other species can't talk without translators, which are notorious for inaccuracies. But our mouths make enough of the same sounds that, once the language is learned, you can just talk." The Shrine paused, swirling his bottle of vapors in his offhand while staring into them, the roiling green gas rolling over itself like water. "The first time he saved my life, I expected a call of blood debt, and perhaps, in a way, he did. 'You'll do the same for me next time, right?' was all he offered." Leshrai took a deep inhale before exhaling all in one hurried snort. Perhaps that was his blood depth. Perhaps he merely didn't want to lose his poker partner. I don't know. Life continued like that for a time. It's a dangerous job, mining and refining H3. We had many near misses with dangerous elements, cascading refineries and other issues that come from mining process. I saved his life once too. That night, I also won a game of poker for the first time. Leshrai puffed out his dewlap for a brief moment before retracting it. He told me we could play for real after that. It was a good day. This is not all some sort of bonding ritual, asked Lara. To my knowledge, no, answered Leshrai. But I think that was when we became friends. We requested shifts together, we ate together, and most importantly, we talked. I learned a lot about humanity during that time. But the lie, prodded Sars. Ah, said Leshrai quietly. Yes. Please forgive an old schnick their memories. He leaned his head back and stared at the ceiling. It started out as a normal day as far as the ones with bombardments went. We hunkered down and waited until the entire station shook. That was unusual. Lewis and I had been involved in a very heated game of poker when he looked at me saying, that wasn't right. I agreed. Leshrai looked back at the table. We bypassed the locks and snuck out, heading towards the command station through some of the back tunnels and access ways. I am glad that Lewis had that kind of foresight, because at one point we passed by heavily armored troops and blood. So much blood just outside the hallways. Leshrai took another inhale of the vapors and exhaled slowly. It was the Black Lance. The hiss and a deep intake of breath across the room told Leshrai he didn't have to waste too much time explaining them, so he pushed on. Their own refineries had apparently been retaken by peacekeepers, and so they needed a new one, a better one, in a more isolated arm of the galaxy. Ours. Lewis told me we had to make it to the command center. He had an idea to save some lives. I followed, confident in his ideas, as they had saved both our lives numerous times. Leshrai paused and twitched his tail nervously before continuing. There were 2 of them in the command center. We had plasma torches. They had plasma guns. It was brutal, like opening a can of strash in a Leshrai nest. A few nervous glances moved about the table. Everyone had always wondered where the scars on Leshrai's dewlap came from, and it seems that now they knew. Leshrai, either ignorant or unconcerned by the glances, pushed on. We knew we had limited time then. They had managed to get out of radio calls, and we already knew they were executing everyone they found. We had just started up the process for putting up the red alerts and locking down passageways to allow some of the other miners to escape when we heard them coming. Leshrai fell silent again and remained that way for several long minutes. The attention at the table was complete, and no one dared interrupt at this point of the story. Finally, Leshrai seemed to get a hold of himself before he quietly said, that is when he said, No, I'm right behind you. Green snot began dripping from Leshrai's nose, causing him to furiously wipe it away. I ran like a coward, but he said he was right behind me. We were friends. Humanity certainly don't lie to their friends, right? No one dared move or even speak as Leshrai struggled to get his snot under control. He wiped it away again and again before it finally slowed, and then stopped altogether. He took a deep inhale of his vapors, seemingly unconcerned with the potential side effects, and pressed on. I learned a lot about humanity that day. See, humans lie to protect what they hold dear. Nervous murmurs arose from his listeners, but he pushed on. It's true sometimes that lie is to protect vanity or wealth or power, but other times that lie is to protect something more precious. Humans have lies about a clawed red man who delivers presents to Egglings, But that is a lie to protect the Eggling's sense of wonder, the Scry said. Or they have lies about what happens after death. But that is to provide comfort or solace to those who are mourning and in grief. Humans don't have broodmates like the Snikt do. They are born alone and grow alone. They have only strangers and the old to share the struggles with, and so lies bring them comfort. Their lies wrap them in a security and safety, and it allows them to understand their surroundings or even guard themselves against unwanted conflicts. Our worlds are similar, both full of predators and poison, but the humans have no sharp teeth, no claws, no colored scales to hide. They feel fear like prey, but hunt like predators. They fought for their right to survive, and they did it through lies. Lies to prevent emotional outbursts and keep the tribe intact. Lies to keep the children from running off and accidentally alerting a predator. Or even lies to create amusement and pass the time. I don't understand, said Sa, interrupting briefly. They lie to ensure their own safety. Yes, said Lesrai. The darkness to them held horror. The loss of a single Eggling was devastating to their tribes, as it could take 4 full moon cycles before another could be born. Their brood mothers frequently died during the birthing process, and so, for the sake of the tribe, they did not have the luxury of truth. They could not tell the Egglings the truth of the darkness like ours did, because the darkness, to them, held a fear they could not escape. So they invented lies, stories to tell the Egglings about the power of the darkness so they would be afraid and be careful. And in that caution, the tribe would live. That hasn't stopped even now. The humans fear the darkness. They fear the loss of self, and thus their tribe, if they stray too deeply into it. And the greatest darkness the humans fear is the last one. That, I think, is why Lewis lied. He lied because his species spends their entire lives looking into that final darkness, and he wanted to go into it alone, just like how he was born. He lied so that I would leave and save the others, so that he could go on his final journey, knowing his lie would protect future tribes. He lied to protect. The shrine hailed the last of his vapors and set the bottle back down. He looked at the group around him, but none met his gaze. Humans have many lies. Some are malicious, but many are just their way. They are experiencing the world the only way they know how. His gaze turned to Harus, who looked away. That Caesar you so venomously condemned. That humans' leaders were venom-born. Their venom sacs so full they turned it on their own tribe for amusement. This human wrote laws, scale-born laws, that protected and uplifted their skin-born, their weakest. He did it the only way he knew how, by lying to the venomous so that they would grant him the power to protect. Then, when they killed him, those same skin-born rose in defense and shackled their rulers the only way they could. Deification. The venom-born were now forever under the watchful eyes of the skin-born guardian, because none of them would challenge a god. About that time, the door to the bar swung in, and groups of humans came in, loudly joking and bragging about their hauls for the day while shouting out drink orders. Lishrai stood and waved to them, causing them to wave back excitedly. He looked back at the table of Schnicht. If you will excuse me, my friends are here. He then pulled a deck of cards out from the pouch in his waist and waved it towards the humans as he approached. They cheered, clapped him on the back, and offered him a chair and a bottle of green heavy vapors. The other table remained quiet for some time. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, Henry the Red, Caspar Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon WRE, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.